Hello, to all you Patriots out there in podcast land, and welcome to episode 202 of Canadian Patriot Podcast, the number one live podcast in Canada. We're recording on November 11th, 2019.
My name is Ian. I'm a sport shooter and hobby farmer on Vancouver Island.
As always, my name is Andrew. I'm a recovering libertarian, competitive shooter, and a firearms instructor at Ragnarok Tactical. It's just Ian and I tonight, so we'd love to hear your feedback about the show, or if you'd like to apply to be a panelist, send us an email, feedback@canadianpatriotpodcast.com, or go to canadianpatriotpodcast.com and click on the feedback link. You can find the show on Stitcher or iTunes.
And you can trust us when the screening process for new hosts is not that stringent. I got on here. So you can check the podcast out on facebook.com/Canadian Patriot Podcast and on Instagram at instagram.com/Canadian Patriot Podcast.
We need your help to become a Patriot. No, Patreon. That's the thing. I got distracted about the host thing again.
To support the show.
We need your help to support the show, become a host. But that's not what the ad read said. My brain and what I read it doesn't line up. Please give us $1. I'd like $1. Also buy a t-shirt. Show you're not a communist. Buy a CPP t-shirt for $19.99 plus shipping and theft. Visit CanadianPatriotPodcast.com. Follow the link all the way on the right. Now we'll do what are we drinking. Should be easy this evening. Ian, what are you drinking?
Ice water, duty calls, but it is cold like a mother-in-law's kiss. That's cold.
I mean, I guess. I hear a lot of complaints about this sort of thing. I get along with my mother-in-law. I don't know what everybody else complains about.
Yourself?
Rye. Crown Royal. Canada. At least for the time being.
I'm jealous.
Well, the good news is if Alberta separates, they'll still make Crown Royal because of all the rye. So,
well, they do have Alberta rye as well, like specialized local stuff.
Yeah.
It's okay.
It's okay. I'm not a huge fan of like the only one that I can specifically think of is Alberta Premium. I like Canadian. Let's go into the news, I guess. We'll do the news. First one's going to be the Toronto Star. This is an Alberta article, but not Alberta separatism, so we're putting it in the news segment. Alberta government ends right to sue law-abiding property owners for causing injury while defending their land. So I like this. This is something that Premier Kenney put in. It's going to be retroactive back to January of 2018, and this is going to impact a case that we've talked about a number of times on the show. There's a farmer in Okotoks, Alberta, that shot at an intruder and accidentally hit him. P.S. Get better at warning shots. The intruder was suing the homeowner who was home alone with his young daughter at the time, like his infant age daughter at the time. So the rancher is countersuing the trespasser, and if this law comes into effect, as long as the government doesn't lay any charges against the homeowner, no more frivolous court lawsuits.
Yeah, if he's found not guilty of any criminal offense, then he's not able to be sued. But I love the fact they backdated it to like a month before the Eddie Maurice case. That's fantastic.
Yeah, congratulations to Mr. Maurice. Like, if there's any doubt that he was going to lose in Alberta's legal system in the first place, like this kind of seals it. The people in Alberta are going to be able to defend their property from people trying to come and steal their dog and rape their wife.
Well, it's reached epidemic proportions, the level of break-ins in Alberta rural areas, because they just realized the response time of the police is so low that, yeah, it was like a free-for-all. So, I mean, baby steps, but at least it's in the right direction.
Yeah, I think this is a good step. We'll see what it does. I mean, it's got to go through provincial legislature, and I don't think it is law yet. I think it has to still go through some passage stuff before it becomes law, and then it'll be retroactive to January of 2018.
Yeah, and I don't think there's going to be much resistance in Parliament on that one, or the Legislative Assembly, technically.
Yeah, I don't foresee this being a big thing. I think this is going to go through.
Yep.
But also, people of Alberta, fire better warning shots.
I wonder if shooting out the tire would land a guy in hot water.
I mean, it's lethal force, I would imagine. I'm not a lawyer, but I do play one on TV. Let's go to the other thing where I play an accountant on TV.
Cool.
This is CTV News. Quebec to get $13 billion in equalization payments next year. And
didn't they just declare a surplus?
A $4 billion surplus, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I mean, I'm no accountant either, but if I was given $13 billion, I'm sure I could come with $4 billion to spare.
Well, so, I mean, the way that I looked at this is that Quebec somehow managed to spend $9 billion that's not actually Quebec's.
Yeah, and when they, instead of actually reducing the burden on the federal government and maybe reducing the federal deficit, they decided to spend it on frivolous stuff and give people more subsidies for childcare, and I can't remember what else they were offering. Was it education?
Childcare. I think it was education and childcare. They're expanding or altering the flat rate. I forget what Quebec's program is. $45 a day, provincially subsidized childcare, I think, is their deal. Somebody in Quebec, Tabernac, Saint-Cyr, so on and so forth, send us feedback. Etienne, tell me about clubbing baby seals. I mean, about how your government's spending my money.
Yeah. Actually, we should.
On the upside,
we should mention Generic's comment there on the YouTube commentary. It is November 11th, so we should. It's a little belated, but thanks for your service, everyone.
Yeah, we put up the same video every year of Highway of Heroes, so go and check us out on Facebook and listen to that, and go find a veteran and do something nice for them, or at least don't be an asshole. Do what Don Cherry tells you to. Buy a fucking poppy.
Chances are you won't get fired for it.
Well, I probably won't get fired for it, but we'll see.
Yeah.
I don't even. Whatever. I'm not prepared to really talk about the Don Cherry thing, but yeah, November 11th today. So anyway, back into the news. Ontario is on the list of have provinces again. So for the first time in 11 years, the first time in 11 years that Ontario is back on the list of have provinces.
It's almost like Ontario gets a liberal government, becomes a have-not province, gets a conservative government, becomes a have province.
Damnedest thing how that happens. It's almost like the market responds to the way the government behaves.
That's so weird.
Super weird. Have-not provinces continue to be Quebec, Manitoba, Nova Scotia, PEI, and New Brunswick. No one is shocked by this turn of events except for the people in Quebec.
And I think if it wasn't for Hibernia, I think Newfoundland would be a have-not as well, but they've got that to cover them. So.
Oh, and I guess thank you for generic first, generic last comment on the YouTube. Quebec is apparently $8 a day for childcare. So
wow.
I think that's wheat dollars.
What?
So still taking things from Alberta.
Yeah.
It's a prairie joke. Yeah. I don't even know what to do about Quebec. Like $13 billion and they still managed to overspend. I don't know what to do about that. I don't have anything
not just
to say about it.
Not just overspend, but once they paid off all they plan to, they have extra left over, so they spend more instead of actually just saying, hey, we could roll back some of that debt level. No, that'd be silly.
If the government was any other business, they would have gone bankrupt and not be in business. I guess it is beneficial that they can just print the money, so to speak. I mean, because fiat currency and made up money.
Or squeeze harder.
Steal from Alberta more?
Yeah. Tax more. What could possibly go wrong? People might leave, of course, but
I mean, growing separatist sentiment in Quebec
or Alberta.
That's what I meant. Alberta, growing separatist sentiment in Alberta. All right, on to gun bans. I feel like we're going to have a short show tonight. You and I are very on the same page about a lot of these things, and I either didn't do a good job of picking articles or the articles are not very exciting.
No, it's just pretty straightforward. There's not much to argue about, really.
Well, all right, fine. How about this one? CBC News. This is from Toronto, but it's on the CBC. City's health board poised to ask province for a ban on the sale of handgun ammunition.
The fuck is handgun ammunition?
I don't know, but I feel bad for the one gun store in Toronto that's about to not be able to sell it.
Yeah, that's Al's, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. The Al Flaherty's is the only gun shop in Toronto. And there's some other gun shops in the GTA in Mississauga and Oshawa and Thornhill, I think, has a gun shop. I forget where Tenda is. Go see those crazy Asians. They have really good deals.
Funny thing is, you look at anything from like the PC carbine shooting 9mm to the fact that there's pistol AR-15s. I mean, that's right up there with assault weapon for like nebulous descriptions.
Oh, Thompson Center.
Yeah,
we make guns specifically so you can fire high caliber or high caliber rifle cartridges out of a pistol platform.
Yeah, and I guess they haven't heard of like reloading or just driving an extra 10 miles and out towards Sale or something or Bass Pro to grab handgun ammunition, then drive it right back in. I mean, what the hell is this supposed to do?
Well, I guess they're going to try and stop people from getting murdered with semi-automatic assault handguns in Toronto. I don't know, because like no one's bought. I probably shouldn't speak in like absolutes, but I feel like I can get away with no gangbangers are buying 9mm from Al Flaherty's.
Yeah, and if they've got the agency or they want to put enough effort in to get a handgun, they'll probably put enough effort in to arrange it for ammunition. It's not like they're going to say, "Oh, if only could get ammunition some harder, easy way, I'd go for it." But it just might require me to drive for 10 minutes. Like I don't understand. Like it's a label under a health banner. It's ridiculous.
Well, it is, and it's going to require 3 levels of government to operate or to coordinate to allow this to happen, because the city would have to pass some sort of a bylaw that then they're going to have to get the provincial CFO on board with, the Chief Firearms Office, because they're the ones that hand out the licensing for the stores, and then they're going to have to get the RCMP and the Canadian Firearms Program involved so they can actually enforce this, because the CFO, I don't think, has jurisdictional authority to prohibit the sale of specific types of ammunition. So I wish the bureaucrats good luck with all of the red tape they're going to try and cut through on this.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it would be precedent setting if they were to figure out how to ban pistol ammunition, handgun ammunition, whatever the language is that they're using in Toronto. This would enable municipalities, I'm thinking, like maybe the same county that's just to the west of Calgary that decided that they wanted to pass laws saying that Alberta should be allowed to have referendums. Maybe this will set precedents to allow cities that want to have things like pistol ammunition so we know where to move.
Yeah. I mean, the funny thing is if you were caught with pistol ammunition in your possession, but okay, I bought it in Barrie and the Cabela's in Barrie, but I just happened to be in downtown Toronto and had some in my car. What are they going to do? I mean, it's still federally legal. It's getting to be like the U.S.
It's enforceable.
No, it's like the U.S. multi-jurisdictional thing.
We've seen it before. If they were actual criminals that are being caught, this is just another charge that's not going to stick. They're just going to be let out. Their certity's not going to be handed over to the Crown. Like we're not holding criminals accountable for the gun crimes they are committing. So making one more paper gun crime isn't going to do anything to impact violence in Toronto.
No, and like Darren says on the YouTube there, it's like just virtue signaling. It's just they're trying to, I guess maintain votes. They're not going to lose anymore or win anymore with this kind of talk, but I don't know. It's seems a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah. The Toronto City Health Board is also asking for the federal government to prohibit the availability, sale, possession, and use of handguns, assault rifles, and semi-automatic firearms all over Canada.
Well, I'm not surprised there, but
Toronto thinks that they should be able to dictate what everybody else gets to do.
Well, I'm pretty sure the country does rotate around them, right?
It is the center of the universe.
Yeah. I'm just dying to go on I'm just dying to go into this next article when you're talking about ammunition.
All right. Well, this is a little bit closer to me. This is on CTV News Kitchener. Police seize 250 guns, 200,000 rounds of ammunition from Kitchener residents.
And the best part is about this article is the fact that out of every other news article that's come this way about seizing 15 guns and 1,500 rounds of 22, and they call it a cache or a stockpile. This guy actually has a legit stockpile, and they don't use the word. It's just like, what?
Yeah, I feel like they really missed out on an opportunity here.
Yeah, like 200,000 rounds. That's actually, I have to tip my hat to that. That's a pretty healthy amount of ammunition, and 250 guns. I'm definitely jealous of that one. But I'm
a little annoyed with CTV, or I don't know, maybe Waterloo Regional Police Services, who I should be annoyed with. I'm not sure who decided to write this out or like who developed this information, but the fourth sentence in the article: a grenade was also recovered, but was later found not to have explosives in it.
So it wasn't a grenade.
It was also bright blue and is clearly not a grenade, but neither here nor there. I do appreciate the photo where they went to the effort of taping the pin into the spoon and taping the spoon to the bottom of what is obviously a practice version of an M67 fragmentation grenade.
Can never be too careful, sir.
It's clearly a training grenade. It's so you can see how heavy it is and how hard you have to throw it. It is not actually. God, I hate the media.
But the good, this guy actually had a really impressive collection of Mausers, judging by the first frame in that video. I'm looking at it. It's got to be at least 30 Mausers sitting there,
and a number of old, what look like 22 caliber pistols.
And P08s, a couple sitting in there in the bin, but pretty sure they are anyway.
Well, they might be. It's hard to see on the little tiny picture they have.
But yeah, the amount of nickel, or not, what do you call it, chrome butt plates there from the wartime manufacturer is pretty awesome.
Yeah, lots of Mausers, a Ruger. I think there's an AR-15. There's definitely a stock for an AR-15, but you can't see what it's attached to.
Yeah.
So this guy looks like he liked his milsurps, and it looked like he liked his wood hunting guns.
Yeah.
But 250 is a healthy size collection. The media does go out of their way to say that the man was licensed for all of these firearms, but was not keeping them safe, which I find suspicious based on most of these being non-restricted, and we don't know what state they were in before the police seized them.
And had a break and enter occurred, those guns could have potentially reached the streets. Well, that's the same thing as like a knife or a 22 semi-auto or anything else. It doesn't matter what it is. It could have reached the streets if it was stolen. That's kind of a red herring comment. But
yeah, and then spokesperson for Waterloo Region not knowing what the firearms laws are. We're also reminding gun owners to secure and place trigger locks over any firearms, and we're also reminding them to properly store and secure those guns and firearms in a locker or vault or a room that cannot be broken into or a safe that cannot be easily moved. Well,
not necessary.
Not actually a legal requirement, but I guess overkill is the best kind.
There's no kill quite like overkill. Yeah, I mean, the pistols, yeah, absolutely. And if there was, I suppose, a real AR-15, sure, but not for those Mausers. It's either or, man. It's
yeah, unloaded and separate from ammunition, right? That's the rule.
Yeah, and separate is kind of nebulous too. Define separate.
I'm going to say not in the gun.
Yeah. Yep.
Because I mean, that's how I interpret the word separate according to the dictionary definition.
Yep, even on stripper clips 5 feet away is still separate. Anyway.
Well, it doesn't do you any good if it's not already in a magazine or, in your case, a stripper clip.
Yeah. But he's been, of course, naturally got charged with unsafe storage, even if it wasn't necessarily the case. We have to prove that one in court, but punishment by process. Hopefully he's got legal insurance.
Yeah. Sucks to be this guy. I hope he's got legal insurance. I hope that somebody is going to be going to court over this, and I hope that he gets all of his guns back in the same condition the police took them from him in.
That would be the ideal.
All right, let's go a little bit up the 401. We're going to go to Etobicoke, It's a suburb in Toronto. It's on the Toronto Sun. Warmington. Callous killer guns man down at packed Etobicoke Plaza. This is daylight shooting in Peel region, or no, this is actually in Toronto proper, pardon me. So this is a plaza that has a Starbucks and a liquor control board, UPS store, all this good stuff. And I don't know who did what, but they got shot over it. So somebody got out of a black Audi, walked towards the store, shot a man, and ran away. It's almost like criminals in Toronto are going to commit crimes
and not follow laws.
Yeah, if only they had a law that made it illegal to murder people in broad daylight.
Yeah, if that doesn't work, you make a second law about it. Make it doubly legal.
Make it illegal to murder them by killing them with a gun.
That's right.
No shooting, no killing during daylight hours, and no killing with guns. It's double illegal.
Yeah. Bet you didn't think about that whole brandishing a firearm charge either. Bet.
Or probably didn't have the paperwork to have the gun in a public place either. That wasn't a gun store or firing range.
Man, he was definitely callous. I'll give him that.
It was. So this is Toronto's 61st homicide, which I'm not surprised by. I'm actually a little bit shocked the number isn't higher than that. And also it's the 409th shooting of this current year, which gangsters, I guess, are like people in Alberta. Be better at warning shots, guys. I can't believe 409 people have been shot in Toronto this year, and they've only killed 61. What, 61 like homicides in total? That's not even like homicides by firearm. There's no wonder that people like 50 Cent have like 9 bullet wounds from their time as drug dealers. These people are terrible marksmen.
Need those sights for nights. Gatherings to happen.
We do. Where's Tim when we need him? Sights for nights.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've been over this a bunch of time. There are ways to stop this problem, and it involves hiring more police and putting criminals in jail and then keeping them there. And we have the laws on the book to support that. But I don't feel like Toronto, under the current mayor, is going to be interested in doing that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, another fun story about gangs not following laws.
Oh, should we talk about New Zealand?
Oh, yes, please.
Okay, let's go to New Zealand. We don't normally do non-Canadian news, but I feel like New Zealand may be in our future. For some reason, the Coalition for Gun Control seems to be copying a lot of the rhetoric coming out of New Zealand. So I thought it would be worthwhile to copy, or worthwhile to talk about. We'll start with. I swear to God, I hope this is a real news source. I don't usually read international. Stuff.co.nz. And Zed? I'm not sure which way they say it down there.
Zai.
All right, then. Police met with gang leaders to try and convince them to surrender guns during amnesty. So, I guess for all of our Canadians that are living under a rock, there was a shooting in Christchurch, New Zealand earlier this year where many, many people were shot and killed by an apparent lone wolf gunman. The police in New Zealand have decided that as part of, I don't know how to say Jacinda's actual name, the Prime Minister of New Zealand came out and basically said, we're making a lot of guns illegal now. We're not actually going to pass any laws. We're just going to say guns are illegal now. So if you have, I think, any kind of semi-automatic or certain kind of pump action shotguns, or any kind of handgun, any kind of AR-15, like they've basically prohibited all of the guns.
Yeah, even including like Ruger 1022s and like Kui semi-autos from the 60s and everything else.
Yeah, so I think the criteria is like if it's a semi-auto with a detachable magazine of any kind, it just becomes prohibited.
Yeah,
regardless of caliber or capacity or anything like that. Like, I think if it's a semi-auto, they basically have just found a way to ban it. And there's a bunch of stuff about manual action firearms that they've banned because I know a certain type of pump shotguns have been affected by this. I think it has to do with the number of cartridges that they hold, but I don't really follow New Zealand news other than know that they're getting a lot of guns taken away without due process because the government just said, we're going to ban a lot of guns now. Part of this is there's an amnesty period that I think ends in December of this year.
Yeah, down to the last month.
Somehow the police in New Zealand have had a sit down with half of the gang leaders in New Zealand, or 50, and are trying to convince them to turn in their guns.
Yeah, and even Gavin mentioned is like, first of all, the gang leaders were stupid to show up and admit that they're the leader of a gang. But the best part was when the government said, hey guys, if you wouldn't mind, could you give us your guns? And they're like, no, sorry, I can't do it. But I can't do a New Zealand accent anyway, but yeah. And they're surprised. They're like, well, we were really hoping they'd kind of go along with it, but they said they're not willing to, so we're not sure what we're going to do. So
I don't know what the laws are in New Zealand, but I feel like if you're a member of a criminal enterprise, you're probably not able to get a license to own a firearm in New Zealand. I feel like that's the way that their law works.
Well, one would think, but they've had magazine interviews with these gang leaders and everything else, and they're just like, yeah, I've got guns and I'm not giving them up. So, because if I do, my cohort or my competition won't, and those mow us down. So we got to all stay armed. And I mean, but the police were actually stymied. They just had no idea what to do when the gang said no, they're not going to hand in their guns. They were like, but it's the law. They're like, yeah, okay, that's cool, but we're still not doing it. And that's it. They're at a loss, and I'm just shaking my head at this whole thing because gun bans only affect the law-abiding. It turns out.
Well, we've been saying this for ages, and I'm baffled by the people of New Zealand, or I guess the government of New Zealand, the leadership of their police forces, to think that the criminals were going to be dumb enough to show up to the meeting and admit to being in possession of the illegal firearms. That part, that half of the criminal organization sent a representative to that meeting in the first place still baffles me. New Zealand is a weird place. But also that the police thought there was going to be any other outcome where they were going to be like, oh, yeah, I guess, yeah, guns are illegal. We'll turn in our already illegal guns.
You got us.
Well, now they're double illegal. We better turn them in, boys. That like
Mr. Philp reminded us that it's NZ for pronunciation.
Z?
Yeah.
Okay. So they pronounce it the right way then.
Yeah, and they have a Wendy Sukier down there too, but it's Phil Alpers. So probably don't want to.
That name rings a bell, but I don't know why. I've probably read something about him.
I'm not sure if I'd want to waste my time, but anyway. But the good news is nobody. It sounds like not too many law-abiding people are acknowledging this either. So,
well, I would hope not. That's the next thing, and I don't like using Breitbart as a source, but we're going to do it. New Zealanders surrender only 18% of newly banned guns.
Turns out that the law-abiding didn't think it was a good idea either. But I mean, what's Quebec up to now for as far as registration? 30%?
I think it was under 1/3. I don't even know if it's 30%.
Yeah. So I mean, clearly there's a certain point where you're making normal people criminals, like it or not, and that's kind of, you push it too far, and look what happens.
Well, a lack of compliance, I think, is what happens, which is, I mean, that's what this should be, is just non-compliance. Just don't turn anything in. I don't know what the tracking and rules are for New Zealand, but they estimate that they've got 175,000 of these newly prohibited firearms, and they've received 32,000 of them having been turned in. They also have 120,000 prohibited parts that have been turned in. These are things like magazines that are now considered to be high capacity. I don't know what they're going to expect happens in the next month. They've been trying to do this for, I think they started accepting guns 8 months ago.
Yeah, well, they were offering a ridiculously low price for these guns. So I mean, 20% of retail and everything else, and they were shocked that nobody was taking them up on it. For this, what's it called, a forced buyback or a compulsory buyback? But yeah, Not going to
I
happen.
mean, it sounds like theft, but okay.
With your own money too.
Yeah, that part kind of sucks.
Yeah. I got nothing.
Yeah, I neither do I. It makes me sad, but I mean, hey, at least only 18% of the guns are being turned in. That's good news. I wish it was a smaller number, but it's good for being as small as it is.
Make them work for it. I don't think they're going to throw them all in jail if they find them. So,
there's no practical way to enforce. They've met with half of their gang leaders in their country. Apparently, they have 100 gangs in their country, which again baffles me. How it's a nice even round number like that, and it's exactly 100, and they know who they all are. But okay, sure, it's a small island, I guess. Sure. But the criminals have already said, yeah, we're not turning in our already illicit firearms. So why they would expect anyone else to, I don't know.
yeah, actually, I think Australia's participation rate was not as high as they'd led you to believe either. Like they've still got, they figure, a larger percentage of them out in the wild, so to speak. They had a fairly good compliance relatively, but still not 100%. So.
No, and I don't think you'll see 100%. I guess we should thank Jay commenting on YouTube explaining that Alper is someone who worked with Wendy Sukier on South Africa's registration program. And he's trying to explain some of the other people that are involved in the New Zealand gun grab. I don't really care who they are or what they do. They should stop trying to take people's. They should stop trying to take law-abiding New Zealanders' firearms and maybe focus on their 50 criminal masterminds that showed up to the meeting with the police.
Actually, Jay brought up another good point too, is that the police won't confirm that the elected officials have complied with the new regulations because one of their cabinet ministers was put it up to Facebook. He was out firing a semi-auto AR-15, I think in a different country, but it doesn't matter. The fact he's all like, he was posing with his gun and everything else. He's all proud of himself, and yet he was one of the ones that voted for this gun ban. So obviously, like, he's not complying, or he's not, going to abide by the same set of ethos that he expects everybody else to. So I mean, like, it's kind of ridiculous.
That might be standard politician fare, though. Do as I say, not as I do, right?
Yeah.
Who else would vote themselves a raise and a pension after 4 years?
Yeah. Mr. Hyman says, what's up? But hey, he got a deer today too.
Hey, Sean, congratulations on shooting a deer.
Yeah, a bit of a drag through the snow pile that I saw, but he did her. I think maybe it was yesterday. It was yesterday, I think, actually. But
and I've got a new title, I think, for this one. I think this might be the winner. We're going to call it Rednexit.
It is the trendy thing to do. Put exit on the backside of something.
Well, I was talking to somebody about Wexit, and I still think Wexit is a terrible name for a movement for separation. I understand that Brexit is a whole, like, Britain exiting the EU. I get it. You're clever, but I mean, like, this is like calling everything Watergate for 40 years.
Yeah,
we get it. It was a historically significant event. So the short block for Wexit now is Rednexit, which I think is better. They block Rednequa, which I think is funnier, and Ye-Hodists. So maybe next week we'll have settled on a title for this particular segment, but that's kind of the short list now.
Yeah.
Let's do the first one. CBC. Alberta addresses separatist sentiment by studying measures that would give province more autonomy. So Kennedy did his thing, gave a speech. It's an hour long. It's at the Manning Center. I was hoping to listen to it all, but actual stuff got in the way of doing that. So there's some comments there's some quotes in the CBC that we're going to use instead. So you'll have to pretend that I'm Jason Kenney. So imagine that I'm more into Ottawa than I actually am.
We'll have to suspend our disbelief for a while, but
yeah. So I think overall this it's a good sentiment, but I think that Kennedy is not going to push for separation. I think that he is doing his best to keep Alberta a member of Confederation and in line. And I think that he's going to do everything he can to avoid a referendum, because I think that if they call a referendum in Alberta, the people of Alberta have had enough of Ottawa and they're ready to separate. I think that that's recognized in Kenny's speech. Particularly, there's a quote towards the end of his speech about the policies being made for downtown Toronto not being realistic for rural Albertans. So, at least whoever's writing his speeches gets the idea that you can't be a farmer in rural Okotoks, Alberta, and expect the RCMP to have a 2-minute response time the way that the Toronto police do to downtown Toronto crime. Because, they're 2 hours away because it's rural Alberta and there's 3 of them and it's going to take a while for one of them to drive there. So I think I think Kennedy is doing everything in his power to try and assuage the fears of your average Albertan, that despite the fact that unemployment is up and that they're implementing new programs that are going to cost Alberta more money, and they're trying to roll back all the damage that Notley has done, I think that he's doing everything that he can to keep the transfer payments going to Quebec, to keep the paymasters in Ottawa happy.
Well, and I think unlike Quebec, which basically held a vote just to give the government a bit of a shakedown for more cash, I think if Albertans voted on it, it was for it to be for reals, right? They're not going to sit there and say, well, we voted yes, now what are you going to give us? So it's no, we voted yes, hasta la vista. But actually, I was talking with the wife today about all this stuff, and she's quite correct in the fact that all this stuff would have to be done anyway if they actually are going to separate. Now, like I said on election night, I think Kenny was put in place specifically to avert this whole separation thing. But if he eventually has to give in to the overwhelming demand for it, all this stuff would have to be done. So if he's going to change around the revenue agency and kind of rearrange the collection agreement with the federal tax, that would have to be done. But the big thing here that I want to talk about was the just like what Quebec did, is get their own provincial pension plan. So did you hear more about that, or did you read about that?
I have not read about that. I started reading through the Fair Deal, which I really don't like the name for these things, because
no, it's like a Green New Deal,
or just the New Deal. Anytime the government names anything, I just assume the opposite of whatever the title is the content of the law.
Yeah, it's like the Patriot Act. I get it. So what would happen is, so if they had an Alberta pension plan, just like QPP over in Quebec, the nice thing is right away that's a shakedown to the government, meaning the government would be on the hook, or on the hook for I think it's $45 billion they would have to hand Alberta right now in order to establish the pension plan based on the Albertans' contributions for it. Because they're running a deficit, they don't actually have money set aside per se. It goes into a slush fund, general revenue, and they have to pay it out of there for these pension plans. But if Alberta had a standalone one, they would have to give them cash for the fund. So right there, because Alberta demographically has a younger population than the rest of Canada, you're ensuring that the Albertans might actually have a chance of seeing their pension plan down the road versus the eventual Ponzi scheme, which is the nationwide situation right now, is that a lot of people won't be seeing what they're contributing for.
I'm one of those people. I don't expect to see anything from CPP. My pension.
And same thing when I'm in retirement, it'll get clawed back from me. I'll never see a dime of it. But I mean, I think it's a brilliant idea, just right off the bat, something that's been proven it can be done thanks to Quebec. Let's do the same thing for Alberta, and right away you're securing your own constituents' long-term futures, which is only going to make them, it's going to mollify them a little bit from their anger right now. So solid move on his part. I mean, it's brilliant. It really was. If it happens. And he's actually, he's taking a page from Quebec on a lot of stuff, and the fact that they can't really argue it because they gave it to Quebec. So just like the QPF, if they get rid of the RCMP and put it in a APP, I guess, they got to come up with a better acronym.
A provincial police force.
Yeah. Provincial police force and PPF maybe, I don't know, but that'd be great if you had an Alberta specific police force as well as the CFO, right? Chief Firearms Officer for the province. That's not an RCMP appointee or something. That'd be awesome too, because they might actually have a little bit better understanding of Alberta specific firearms issues.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what they do. A lot of this stuff is very reminiscent of 20 years ago in Alberta. They talked about doing this. They talked about building firewalls, and Ralph Klein was all like, "Herp a derp, nope." But I mean, yeah, they talked about this 20 years ago. Stephen Harper had signed on to the plan at the time. Ralph Klein, who was a person who I'm not a fan of, rejected it and refused to do anything about it. So a lot of this stuff, I think, is just rehashing things that Alberta has talked about doing in the past. I'm interested to read through what the Fair New Deal could entail and to see over the coming months what their studies are going to reveal about these various programs and proposals that they intend to look into. I'd like to see what they actually want to do with it, but
Well, and I think he's calling their bluff.
Along.
Yeah, he's going to call their bluff between Energy East and TMX if he's going to build a pipeline east and west, or not. And if he doesn't, well, then he's obviously going to fuel the separatist sentiment. But if he get 2 pipelines built to get their product to market, maybe they'll keep him from separating. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what they end up doing. The last article for Red Nexit is on the Financial Post. This is a Lawrence Solomon article. If Alberta turns separatist, the rest of Canada is in big trouble.
No shit.
I'm immediately going to counter that with the rest of Canada is already in big trouble.
Yep.
But let's look at some of the numbers. Recent Ipsos poll that was conducted says that 62% of people in Alberta believe that Alberta does not get its fair share from the Confederation. The remaining 48%, the remaining 38% can't do the math to figure out how much money they gave to Quebec this year. It's like, I don't understand, like, how anyone could have voted that their opinion could not be that their opinion could be that they are getting their fair share would baffle me. The amount of money that Alberta has taken away from them and redistributed to the other have-not provinces doesn't make any sense.
Unless they're asking a bunch of people in downtown Edmonton, Strathcona. I mean, that would explain a few things.
Well, and we don't know how big the poll sample was. We don't know where it was conducted or how, but Ipsos polls tend to be reasonably reliable. And 18% of Albertans believe that the views of Western Canada are adequately represented in Ottawa. So at least, I mean, that seems more realistic. At least people can see how few members of Parliament come from Western Canada compared to Ontario and Quebec. A quarter of Albertans believe that Alberta would be better off if it were to separate from Canada. And this number has been constantly on the rise as they go through these polls over the last couple of years. This number keeps going up, and it's gone up substantially since this past election last month.
Well, and if they're admitting to 25, the actual number is a lot higher.
I would imagine it would. A lot of people are probably not going to admit to this. And again, we don't know how the poll is being conducted. So if some guy calls you and he's like, "Hey, do you want to separate from Canada?" I can't imagine a lot of people saying yes to that question. Whether they want to or not. Like, it depends on how the poll is being conducted, right?
Yep.
And of course, if Alberta does separate, this is problematic for all of the 5 have-not provinces that we started the show off with. Quebec, particularly, $13 billion of not their money, which without they'd be running a $9 billion deficit, plus the 4 that they're planning to spend anyway.
Yep. And we already lead the, we're going to find out next week too. I guess we already lead the developed world in debt right now, as in per capita and so on and so on.
Well, we should look at the debt thing next week, but
yeah.
Consumer debt is ridiculously high. Ontario is the largest sub-sovereign debtor. The unit of measure smaller than a country with the most debt. We have more debt in Ontario than the state of California, the most indebted state in America, a state that's barely able to keep power on for its residents.
And how many times bigger is it than Ontario, population-wise?
Immensely. I think there's more people that live in the state of California than in the entire country of Canada.
You are correct.
right? Like the population of California is like 50 million people or something.
Well, they're all roughly the same. Canada, California, and Mexico City. All, if you actually take in the surrounding area of Mexico City, they all have the same amount of people, just in different, square mileage. It's actually kind of terrifying. But yeah, lots of debt there.
Yeah, and what's Alberta? One person per 22 square kilometers or so?
About that, yeah.
Well, that sounds a lot more my speed.
Yep.
Keep the neighbors far away enough that I would actually need a towed artillery piece in order to properly protect my frontage.
Just imagine having your own clay target thrower in the backyard. Shoot off the back deck. Beautiful.
The backyard, the back several kilometers.
The back 40.
The back 20 anyway.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll see what comes next week. I want to look into this this new deal, fairer deal, whatever, for Alberta thing. We'll see. I don't think that if Alberta leaves, I don't think that that's any shock to anybody that listens to our show that we've been saying this for the weeks since the election, that if Alberta decides to separate, the rest of the country is pretty screwed.
Yep. Hey, Philip, if you got a clay thrower in your backyard, color me there.
I don't think we have any rapid fire feedback this week, or at least I haven't checked the email today, and I don't open iTunes anymore. I just wait till I get an email about that. So no rapid fire feedback this week. We would like to hear your feedback about the show. This week is going to be short, so if you want to add to stuff to next week, or if you want to be a panelist, you should email the show, feedback@canadianpatriotpodcast.com, or I guess you could submit iTunes review. Don't submit a Podbean review, because I get an email about it, but it's only like the first sentence, and I don't know how to find the rest of the review. So sorry, Podbean listeners. I guess there's at least some of you on that platform. I still don't know how we got on that platform. I'm still not going to figure it out. So much contempt for the listener. Ian, where can everybody find you?
You can email me at theislandretreat@gmail.com, and you can also find me chatting away on Canadian Prepper Podcast, trying to get our next episode going on fortifying the Doomstead, but we're having a little trouble with scheduling right now.
I can appreciate that. It's hard to get reliable help. As always, you can find me at RagnarokTactical.ca. You should use the discount code Patriot at checkout. It'll save you a couple of bucks. I'm waiting on a big order of first aid stuff to come in, and then we'll be back in stock for pretty well everything on the website at that point. So get some tourniquets or some first aid supplies or some bandages or body armor or what have you. Well, unless you live in Alberta, then you need to have the appropriate license.
Which is a PAL, isn't it?
Yeah, it's up to you. Whatever jurisdiction you live in, make sure you have the appropriate license. I ship nationwide. I don't care, but you need to make sure that your ass is legally covered. And I have to apologize to Rod. I'm sorry we couldn't fit Rod Giltack on the show this evening. Obviously, the same way that we represent the Western provinces in Parliament is the same system that we use on CPP. We have one Westerner. That's enough. If you want Rod on the show, then you have to get rid of Ian. That's how it works.
Or put one of us in Alberta, separate it off, and then he can be the token Westerner for Canada.
Canada West, a.k.a. Vancouver.
That's right. He's there.
Or is that little Beijing now? I'm not sure.
I'll try not to insert my racially insensitive joke here.
Buy a damn poppy.
That's right. You people.
You people. For our listeners out there in podcast land, I'd like to remind you that you people are the true north, strong and free.